Hey there, Teenacity fam. Today, I want to take you all on a trip down memory lane to those childhood days that many of us have spent glued to the captivating tales of the epic Ramayana. Every time I watched an episode, I was reminded of the exemplary conduct of Lord Ram, whether as a devoted son, or a caring brother, or a just ruler. His story deeply influenced how I value and nurture my own relationships. Today, as I stand on the threshold of adulthood, ready to navigate through life's adversity in a world filled with diversity, the importance of being authentic, leading a life of purpose with integrity while creating meaningful connections has never been clearer. As someone who's been both the elder and the little sibling, I've sat through my fair share of lead by example talks from my parents. Back when I was 10, trying to be like Lord Ram felt like a tall order. But now, as I'm growing up and taking on leadership roles at home and at school, it's starting to make a lot more sense. The more I reflect, the more I wonder, what is it about Lord Ram that makes him a timeless source of inspiration for today's youth? It's plain to see that his wisdom isn't just ancient history. It's a beacon guiding us through the complexities of modern life, even in the 21st century. So join me on my quest as I unravel the mysterious but undeniable connection between leadership and mental wellness, because I believe that just like Lord Ram, we all have the power to lead by example and make a difference in the world. In this episode, helping us discover what it truly means to be a leader in today's ever-changing landscape is our esteemed guest, Mr. Mohinish Sinha. He's the cream of the crop in the world of leadership. Sir has been in the game for over 25 years with tons of experience in organizational transformation, leadership development, and coaching. He's like the Yoda of leadership, except he's even cooler. Not only is he a partner at Deloitte India, but as the people and purpose leader, he helps organizations and their management to build the right culture and right leadership, which we'll definitely dive into later. But he's also lent his experience to startups and big short corporations alike. Talk about versatility. From education to oil and gas, banking to IT, you name it, he's conquered it. And when it comes to speaking gigs, let's just say that he's in high demand on the speaking circuit, gracing prestigious HR forums and academic institutions with his wisdom. Oh, and did I mention? He is a social media wizard. His webinars on leadership development are like the Avengers of online learning. They are packed with action and excitement. So with him on board, get ready for some downright awesome conversations that will not only unlock your leadership potential, but also give your mental wellness a serious boost.
Out there is the real process of leadership journey.
Very well put, sir. I think everything that you mentioned, it was extremely pertinent to this discussion. And I think something that I'd like to add is that looking for role models in a certain situation, especially for our audience listening here, to be a role model, you do not necessarily need to be one person with a set of all attributes and everything about you being ideal. I think personally in my life, I've picked up from role models from all spheres of life. And from one peer, perhaps I learned something. Their work ethic, perhaps I find to be really, really strong. But there might be other traits of theirs that are not particularly ideal. But I think even from those people, we can pick up a couple of things, pick up a certain habit from here, a certain habit from there. So you may not appreciate everything about a role model, but it's about those little things that you pick up from people around you that inspire you. And then I think you inculcate that in yourself and you try to portray it through your behavior. And at the end of the day, leadership is a process of unlocking all these skills that you do have, all these values that you do have, and nurturing them up to a certain level. And each level you sort of unlock, each time you go up, it's like a video game that you're unlocking more of an audience that's able to relate to you. So a leader might be for a particular classroom, and you might have to grow those skills to be able to lead an entire grade or to be able to lead an entire school and so on and so forth. So I think very well put by you, sir. What you said was very thought-provoking. I'd like to ask, like you mentioned, the second point that you mentioned about putting yourself out there. I think that's a very, very interesting practical insight for leaders to sort of expand their abilities and find their true self. But I'd like to ask a question slightly related to that. So, sir, in what ways do individuals who excel in leading and guiding others prioritize their own mental and physical health? Could you please offer some more practical tips and practices that teens can integrate into their daily routines to enhance these abilities?
I acknowledge the fact that the world is getting very complex out there. Right. And one of the aspects that we haven't sort of talked about, but is all around us, is that we are bombarded with the amount of data. Just to kind of give you a sense that our brains can at most deal with about 190 bits per second kind of a exposure or something like that. But on average, we are getting bombarded with 240 bits per second. It's overwhelming to our neuroscience. And therefore, the point around maybe 50 years ago when the world was a little slower. The ability for us to process and pick up the right choices, the examples I talked about, taking charge and taking responsibilities, came at very little cost because it was really I had to kind of manage myself. But now, because of the overwhelm of environment around me, data, phone, being exposed to social media, all of that, it even overwhelms part of our brain. And the direct consequence of that is it affects our own sense of who we are. There is a fascinating study that was done in the US, I think just a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, around COVID time, that there were a bunch of late school, early college students were put in a room, and they were told that, look, you have to sit in the room. It's a completely white room. There's nothing else, no window, nothing. All you have to do is sit for 15 minutes in the room, right? Quietly, not engaging with anything else. And then around in the room, they put a buzzer that would give you, if you touched it, it'll give you a small shock. So people were told that, look, you can sit here for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, something as short as that. And, then we let you out. I think around 80% or 85% of the youngsters chose to give themselves a shock rather than sitting still in the room. And that is a direct consequence of this overwhelm that I'm talking about. So the mental health issue is also of the environment we are in. Now, the question that you ask is, okay, if I develop myself as a leader, how do I develop a mental resilience? How do I manage this better, right? So let me attempt to give you a few practical solutions, right? So the first one is recognizing the overwhelm. What's the exposure you have to the online world, to the constant desire for excitement, right? It's, I'm talking to teenagers, but equally, I've seen 35-year-old people, or even us at our age. We're sort of addicted to constant excitement, trying to, hey, let's listen to music now. Okay, now we get into this. Now let's read a book. Let's go for. So we're constantly wanting to do something. And what that does is that it doesn't allow our old brain to process what your new brain has been exposed to. That processing time is very important. The subconscious needs to kind of sit down and churn some of your experiences and give you insights. Right? But if you're constantly, hammering your mind with mind-numbing experiences, right, and constantly on the treadmill, your mind doesn't switch off. And the only time it switches off is when you sleep in the evening, which is and this is including my girls who are youngsters. They don't sleep on time. They sleep at late. I'm not generalizing, but if you're not sleeping well enough, then this brain doesn't find enough time to be able to process some of that really well. So what's the answer there? Is to pace yourself. We all know what is the right exposure. Taking the right level of digital detox, right? Not exposing yourself on that. But equally, not exposing also means doing things which are also boring. Equally, right? So not constantly engaging with something that gives you the short. Do something boring like taking a walk. Standing on the grass and just looking up at the sky. Sounds like a very boring, and why do we need to do it? But what it does, it disconnects the brain from active excitement, and it gives its time to be able to now process your environment. Your brain is your advisor, right? They're helping you. So that's the first thing, right? Reducing that. The second is doing the basics around physical, and I'm not the most adept at that, but I should certainly talk about good sleep, good food. We know the influence of that on diet's influence on mental health is phenomenal. Right. And the third, which is really comes directly in the realm, now the Leadership Act kind of kicks in, is give yourself a purpose. So if you're going to be taking charge, if you're going to be taking responsibility, what do you want to take responsibility for? What gives you joy, right? What is that thing that you want to do? Now, some of us are lucky. We understand what our purpose is. Some of us are not. It's okay. Go with what excites you around something. Hey, maybe I need to understand, how this works, right? Maybe cryptocurrency works. I got to figure it out, right? I'm going to go deeper into it. And it doesn't matter, because if you go deeper into it, you understand, you engage. That purposefulness creates a sense of focus. And finally is a continual practice, as I said earlier, journaling, making friends. Friends are, again, relationships are is the strongest antidote to mental health, just building connections. So those are the sort of the housekeeping pieces. So building connects, journaling, engaging in something that gives you joy, like singing, you like dancing, engaging on all of that. So to me, mental health is a wider issue. And therefore it requires some of these foundational practices, right from some of the things that I spoke about, to be able to all coming together. And finally, mental health is real. The challenge is real. More and more people are affected. I implore you. I've also been a crisis intervention counselor working with people who are clinically depressed. Go and share and let people know, let your parents, your caregivers know that you have a challenge. Seek professional advice or professional support. There are a lot of there. And when you are in that position of needing that support, you may need a certain regimen that is guided by your practitioner. Do all of that, but on an ongoing basis, some of these suggestions I'm making that will help you or help your listeners to build a better platform to deal with mental health in a right way.
So very well said, sir. I really agree with you completely. I think the first point that you mentioned was extremely, extremely relatable for me, because I think our brain is functioning in overdrive increasingly for teenagers in today's day. And reflecting on my lifestyle as well, there is a constant need for sensory stimulation. There's a constant need for dopamine. And I'll give you an example here. It'll seem quite silly on my part, but about 15 to 20 days ago, I was diagnosed with typhoid. I did not know that at the time. I thought it was just a regular viral, and I'm still recovering. But 2-3 days into it, there was this period of around 16 hours where I did not get fever, and I thought I'm completely okay now. And my school exams had just ended. I had given my ACT exam, and I was really getting bored sitting at home for those last 2-3 days. So I called up my friend, and I'm like, let's do something interesting. And he suggested, okay, let's make a WhatsApp group with 3, 4 other of our friends, and let's go karting. 12 hours ago, I could not remember the anguish I was in, and I decided to go karting. And as soon as I came home, my head felt heavy, my legs felt weak, my knees felt weak, and I collapsed onto the bed. And I slept for the next 16 hours. And as a result of that, I had to miss the next 8 days of school consecutively. And it took a lot to recover. So I think I completely agree. Even if you know that there is a challenge of having this everlasting, omnipresent need for excitement in one's life, even if you know that, sometimes you just get swayed away in the emotion of it because it's something that you're used to. And on a related note, I think this topic merits a podcast of its own, but it wouldn't be complete without addressing AI's role in leadership, right? So sir, could you please share your insights on how AI is shaping the future of leadership and what you see as its impacts on teenagers, because AI is definitely growing and it has a pervasive impact on all of our lives. So what's its impact on teenagers and on leadership?
So it's probably one of the most profound shifts that's going to happen. AI is bringing in, and in the current avatar of Gen AI and where it's going, this whole effort to get to an AGI, it's mind-boggling, the world that the next generation has to deal with. I mean, we are all dealing with it already. So the importance of the moment, we need to just pause and savor and experience, right? So there is a very interesting Greek mythology, right, of Prometheus, who stole the fire from the gods and gave it to the humanity, right? Human beings have used fire to build their entire civilization. AI is one such moment. So it's very profound in the way it's shaping everything that we do. Now, what does that mean, right? From a leadership standpoint. So if you see all of AI, it's basically mimicking human beings, our own frailties, our strength, our biases, our way of thinking, and does it faster. Now, the problem with that, the positive of that, let's call it the positive. The positive is it helps you and I to enhance our capability to superpower level. But then if you have the strongest capability available to you, do you have the maturity to run that capability? And we've known that the same tool can tell you how to make a bomb, how to do this, how to do things that are destructive in some form. So the first part of leadership is anchoring in something we spoke about, knowing who I am, what are my values, right? And anchoring in that, anchoring in the fact that what's my responsibility? Am I here to destroy the world, or am I sort of putting my bits in strengthening the world and where things are? So that's one part of it. So leadership, this dimension of leadership becomes even more critical to make responsible choices as to where these technologies are going to be placed, right? And to people who are my generation or people who are doing roles as CEOs and executives, their responsibility is, look, if I make this choice, I can make a lot more profits here, but I may be putting 10,000 people out of jobs. That's one dimension of leadership that becomes critical. The second dimension of leadership is what a AI is doing is it is easing up the capability, but the human connect, even if you put an AI bot, and there are a lot of amazing bots, I don't know if you have interacted with any one of them, they will speak human-like, right? They're as if sort of chatting with you and me, but you know that they can only do in one context. They do not really have empathy, even though they may mimic empathy, but they really don't have empathy. And those qualities of empathy, of connection, of that the human dimension of valuing someone, love, for example, those we don't know until AGI comes in. We don't think the AI is anywhere near there, and therefore those qualities need to be brought into the play. To the example I talked about, as a CEO, as an owner, your choice in, okay, I'm going to make more money here, but 10,000 people are going to go out of job. What responsibility do I take? The dimension of using my empathy, my human connect, looking at my environment in a way from a lens of responsibility, those become even more important, because those choices can have a catastrophic effect on any of these. So in effect, AI can help me strengthen or destroy faster than any of the tools I have seen before. So I, as a leader, need to be that much more cognizant and that much more responsible, that much more aware of where are my failings, where am I coming from. So the softer dimensions become even more critical so that we take the right call there.
Right, sir. Very, very well put by you again. I think it makes it all the more important to understand the thin line there is between what is correct and what is right. And I think it falls into our responsibility to realize what is actually ethical in a particular situation. And taking note of that, even though we may get faster results, more efficient results, the intrinsic emotional value or the empathetic abilities, they still stem from the leaders, even through the use of AI. And I think it's all the more important, as you mentioned, for leaders to then contextualize everything and really look at the bigger picture before making the decision. I think it's very, very well mentioned by you, sir. And speaking on responsibility, as you had mentioned, I talked in my intro about how a great example of a leader that I was introduced to personally as a child, and now that I've slowly been growing up and getting these leadership responsibilities in school, I really look to as a role model is Sri Ram. So before I ask my next question, I feel like I should give our listeners some context on how diversity and inclusion have been a part of our culture and history through the ages. So, specifically through the Ramayana, how Lord Ram played a significant role in enabling social cohesion and inclusion. Whether it was forming an alliance with the Vanar Sena or accepting Vibhishan, even though he was from the Asur clan, into his fold, and how he sort of integrated him into his own army, and whether it was accepting food from the hands of a devoted tribal woman, Shabri, or performing the final rites of Jatayu, the king of vultures. And even Devdutt Patnaik mentions it cannot get more inclusive than Sri Ram. So, this realization to my mind begs the question of how can we, the high schoolers or the college goers of today, draw inspiration from our scriptures and our heritage to try and create a classroom or an environment where everyone feels respected and included. And no matter what their ethnicity be, no matter what their religion is, their language, their socioeconomic status, their gender identities, and learning needs are, how can we make sure we're not judging others unfairly because of our own personal biases?
That's a beautiful question, Adhiveer. So one on the scriptures itself and how they demonstrated the values in these beautiful stories. And then how do we then bring those into our own life, into our own way of living and so on. So first on the scriptures, right? The beauty of our scriptures has been that they are not a value judgment. They're not telling you do this and do that. They illustrate to you and to us through a story where we are able to see the context. So here is Lord Ram going in a jungle, right? And we know in the context which he did. Just to put yourself in that situation. Imagine someone who's been banished from his kingdom. He's out there living in the jungle. He's not supposed to be found. Obviously doesn't have enough means, has to kind of make do and live off what there is. In that, what mindset would he have had to be able to open himself to those experiences and looking at everyone with that that sense of compassion and care and appreciation, right? Now, the only way we could figure it out is we not only hear those stories, but pause and reflect on those stories and understand those stories and ask ourselves. And I find that very useful. I always ask, okay, so what would he be feeling like that? Right, to the point around that. So ask ourselves that story, the context, and so on, and then learn and draw lessons from it. And these lessons can be they become very apparent in the way they are designed. But to talk about specifically the qualities of Lord Ram, from an inclusion point of view, it's naive of me to think that I would be able to sort of open up some of these aspects fully. But here is what I can say about what he lived